The other day, I got an email that kind of blew my mind. It was from one of my favourite bands, saying that they were massive Warhammer nerds, fans of the channel, and wondered if I could collaborate with them to promote their new release. Now, that's the kind of email that honestly I leave to the next day just in case I dreamt it, but no, it was real. And the band in question is Gunship, the British synthwave band formed by Alex Westaway and Dan Hay, also a fight star, and Alex Gingell. If you know who they are already, have listened to any of their music or seen their cool music videos, you're obviously going to be as excited as I am by this whole thing. But if you haven't heard of them yet, I am genuinely excited because I get to be the one to introduce you. I've been a fan of theirs since their first release back in 2015, I think. Now, long before this channel started, in a former life, I worked in various sectors of the music industry, and over the years I've had the pleasure of meeting quite a few awesome musicians. And yeah, I'm not sure what 2013 guy was doing with that hair either, to be honest, but this time it was a little bit different because the band got in touch with me, which is kind of bizarre because I still can't quite believe that people know who I am or care what I do, but here we are. The Gunship track this is for is called Blood for the Blood God, off their new album Unicorn, and after a bit of back and forth with Dan, I figured out they're basically after a diorama that looks like an in-universe Warhammer 40k gig, with a suitably retro synthwave vibe, neon colours, Chaos Space Marine performers, an audience, and a special request, an old school Predator tank on the stage. I mean, it'll be a challenge, but I think I can make it happen. I've made a few large-scale terrain pieces and models before, and I've got several big old boxes of industrial junk to make cool dioramas and buildings out of, so yeah, let's just give it a go. The funniest thing that I took away from my chat with Dan was that I sounded really familiar, apparently, and not just because of watching Midwinter Minis. And we finally pinned it down to the fact that he'd followed a few tutorials I'd made for Arturia synthesizers back when I worked for them. Small world, huh? So as you can see, I grabbed some of the aforementioned junk from those big boxes and started sizing things up, imagining what stuff could be what in the context of a stage setup. I'm looking for stuff that could be used for various things, like the stage itself, maybe some risers for the drums, an interesting backdrop maybe, gantries for the speakers and lights, things like that. Okay, so first big victory. These 12x12 cake boards are an almost perfect fit for the Zone Mortalis tiles from Games Workshop, so that's a good start. A full 12x12 inch stage would be a bit big though, so I'm going to chop that down so there's 4 tile areas for the stage and 2 for the pit. Also, please enjoy my very summery shorts. I marked out the cake boards and cut 2 of them to the same size as the stage to raise it up a bit from the pit. And yeah, I reckon that's going to work. What do you want? Fine. Okay, after a quick walkies, I glued the cake boards and then sank some wood screws through the boards to keep everything nice and solid. You know what might make a good backdrop? Some of the 200 odd Necromunda bulkheads I have. Absolute classic bits of terrain from the 90s that I'm sure will satisfy the band's retro lust. I hot glued the Zone Mortalis tiles to the boards and then also glued some of that plastic strip stuff you get on the outside of big box deliveries. It has a cool kind of diamond plate texture to it, so I reckon it'll work well for this little wall. It'll mostly be obscured with minis eventually anyway, so it's not super important honestly. The obvious choice for a nice solid foundation for the backdrop is, well, just another cake board will do. I marked off where the floor level of the stage is and started building up a wall of Necromunda bulkheads. As I was hacking and slashing these bits up, I thought how cool it would look if something was busting out of the wall to make it look a little bit less flat. And then, yeah, I remembered that Dan requested having a retro Predator tank on the stage somewhere, so bizarrely, I already have one of these in my many boxes of half-built, half-painted models. I got this a couple of years ago from my pal Simon, who in turn got it from a friend, and it already had a suitably retro and thick paint job. Whoever owned Chaos Killer once upon a time, I hope you can forgive me for what I'm about to do. Well, that felt like a crime. Anyway, I scored the cake board to make stuff stick a bit better to it, brushed off all the dust from the tank, and hot glued it into place. For the sections of the bulkhead that the tank had bust through, I used a rotary tool and clippers to mangle them open, keeping the offcuts to eventually add debris to the stage floor. Once I'd laid everything out and knew where things were going, I primed the backboard black to make it nice and dark so any open windows and doors on the bulkheads don't show anything unpainted behind them. Once that was dry, all the bulkheads got stuck down, and the third story got hacked up to make it look like it was kind of a broken, ruined structure. I then ran my rotary tool around the top of the cake board, and then vacuumed up all of that absolutely toxic dust, no thank you, and then I ripped the backboard apart with my big fat hands. And yeah, you're just gonna have to imagine what that looked like, because did I press the record button? Nope, no I didn't. To seal in that powdery fiberboard dust, I applied a big thick layer of Vallejo texture paint. I didn't want to use anything too wet because it would probably soak into the fibers and make them swell up, so this stuff should do the trick, and ended up looking quite nice and hard and rocky. I've got a few bits of cool toy crane I bought off a kid way back when I made a stupidly huge Orc Great Gargant model. I reckon it'll work nicely for the gantry. I'll put a pin in that for now though, because maybe it is a bit too big. I could possibly find something better to 3D print. Anyway, those bulkheads are looking a bit plain. I spiced them up by cutting up some bits of terrain models, random junk, corrugated card, and sticking down little bits to make it look like a patched up, well-used arena. Let's also shove a little bit of this non-slip undermat stuff into the window for some bonus texture too. And, oh no. You know what? Speaking of 3D printing, I am definitely going to be doing some of this project, but I need to sort something out first. Oh, I've been so busy with other projects. I've left the last things I printed in here for... You know what, it's probably been about 3 months, and things have fallen off the build plate all by themselves and are just chilling out in the separated resin gunk. Time to face the music and clean this up. I mean, give credit where credit's due. The UV filter cover on the Uniformation GK2 has kept things protected from the window sunlight for about 90 days. I gave everything a bit of TLC, cleaned up the forgotten parts, they were absolutely perfectly printed, which was a relief, and spent a bit of time deep cleaning the resin vat and build plate to make sure things would work smoothly for this project. While I was doing that, I also had a chat with my friend Rachel, who runs the Texas-based commission painting company Sensei Swag, who ordinarily specialise in painting massive Forge World Titans, but she just finished a Vaporwave commission and offered some advice on how she got those crazy vibrant results. I mean, that's absolutely eye-melting, but I'm not sure I want everything to look that intense for this project. I still want it to have that kind of grungy, dark gig vibe, especially considering it's 40k themed, but holy balls, this looks bonkers good. Anyway, printer cleaned, I then went on hunt for some cool stuff to flesh out the stage, literally just checking Thingiverse and cults for stuff like guitar amplifiers, stage monitors, drum kits, or at least the component parts of a drum kit, a guitar, and honestly, the amount of stuff you can find on these sites, especially free things, just boggles the mind. I'll leave links to all the stuff I ended up using in this project in the description, by the way, just in case you want to use any of these things for yourself. Well, everything except the stuff that looks a little bit too on the nose to legit Warhammer stuff. I don't want to dob any sculptors in. Now, I'd have genuinely loved to use all Games Workshop models for this, and I'm sure there's lots of people out there waiting for a multi-part Noise Marine kit, but the only official Games Workshop model I had for the Chaos Space Marine Performers was the fairly recent commemorative Noise Marine release. Hattie heroically built that up in between shipping out our retro logo t-shirts, which, good news, we have on sale at the moment, but bad news, the sale has gone well and we've only got smalls and 2XLs left. So if you're at either end of that spectrum, grab one for £14 before they're all gone. Link in the description, but midwinterminis.com, just in case you were wondering. I set the printer to run overnight and the next day, bam, absolutely perfect. Honestly, I know it's not the cheapest thing on the market, but this printer is an absolute dream to use, especially for beginners. The only time it's ever let me down was when I thought that cleaning off UV reactive resin outside in the sun was a good idea, because I'm an idiot. Anyway, everything looks awesome. We've got line array speakers, stage monitors, backline, some strung up Space Marines for the vibes, some sexy demon dancers, and 2 awesome fan-made, similar but legally distinct chaotic armored space warriors with musical instruments. Please, Games Workshop, don't you dare, people just want to have fun. I also printed off another batch of stuff, like stage lights of various sizes, and a surprise file that my pal Steve sent to me after I was chatting with him about the best way to have the band's name on stage. I was just thinking about maybe having like an old school hanging fabric banner. Yeah, Steve said no, have a custom neon sign instead. The boy just pumps this stuff out like it's not the coolest thing in the world. What an absolute legend. Now, time for a bit of model surgery. Gunship's music is really synth heavy, and what better way to represent that than with a guitar? The weapon part of this dude's instrument is getting hacked off very carefully, and yes, the double-necked guitar/guitar hybrid is born. I'd have absolutely killed to have one of these back in the day, to be fair. Anywho, the gantry model I found to print out was, yeah, it's a bit too flimsy for the Warhammer vibe, to be honest, so I went back to the big old crane idea and cut it down a bit to size to span the width of the stage. I also repurposed this damaged old MDF terrain piece. I had to break apart to use the struts as the support of the gantry and the mesh as extra textures. I primed all the printed and kitbash stuff with black and then gave most of the stuff a simple, realistic, dull metallic dry brush to start building up a grungy metal vibe. Being realistic here, this model is going to end up being huge, and I don't have months and months to work on this, so I'm going to use lots of simple, effective, but quite striking paint techniques to help this come together within a sensible time frame. I then gave lots of the models a quick airbrush shade with Vallejo's Signal Blue, which is a really nice deep shadowy transparent paint that'll complement the future neon pink and teal vibes I'm aiming for. I then mixed in some overcast blue into the Signal Blue already on the airbrush cup and started building up a brighter tone on the armor panels of the tank and the performers themselves. At this point, my airbrush came to a sputtering, wheezy end, so I totally dismantled it, gave it a good soak in some IPA for an hour or so, and then gave it a thorough deep clean. I know lots of people see airbrush use as a kind of a cheat code for miniature painting, but honestly, this is the stuff you don't see. All of the annoying, creativity draining tedium of when things go wrong or just don't work quite right in the middle of when you're really focused and doing something cool. Airbrushing is a skill, and it's still a skill I'm working on even after all these years. Anyway, while I was soaking the airbrush in the alcohol, I gave literally everything a coat of diluted Nuln Oil gloss to darken down the recesses. The gloss version seeks out the nooks and crannies way more than the regular version of this wash, so it stains the surfaces a bit less. Oh yeah, and because Space Marine 2 just came out, let's celebrate by painting up the dead Space Marines as Ultramarines. Perfect. The big backline speakers got glued down to the back of this broken toy turned drum riser, and then I assembled my makeshift 40k drum kit from a mix of terrain barrels and 3D printed drum shells. You go there at the back. Nice. And now let's place these stage monitors down so the band can hear what they're doing. What do you mean they're wearing power armored helmets that would definitely have in-ear monitoring? Shut your pie hole, we don't need that kind of logic here, thanks. Now before any other models get stuck down, let's quickly paint on some details, because doing this when they're stuck down to the stage would be crazy difficult. Some desaturated golds to accent the logos on the amps and the jewellery on the demon dancers and the trim on the marines. Now because the light colours I'm going to be painting on later are going to be magenta and teal as requested by the band, I'm going to dry brush some of the models with some lilac paint, which is basically the colour you get when you mix those two super vibrant colours together. So I know this colour is going to be complementary and not jump out and look ugly. I don't want to use pure white on anything here apart from to support the fluorescent paint on the lights, so I used an off-white pallid witch flesh to paint the eyes, base coat hair, and the keys on the keytar, stuff like that. I then mixed in some teal into some brown to cool it down colour temperature wise and painted the fabric parts of the models as well as the drum heads. Now then, I reckon a nice bluish metallic would work really well for the trim on the performers. No. What shows what I know. This is way too similar to the tone I've already used on the armor, so let's just go for a nice bright silver instead. Now for the audience, after toying with the idea of getting loads and loads of new kits, making and painting them, and making this take about 3 weeks longer, I basically chose to use all 30 of my Poxwalkers from my Chaos Space Marines army. I speed painted them as part of a 2,000 point army in one no-sleep painting challenge, but guess what? I've never played a single game with them since then, so I reckon these will be a noble sacrifice. Now while Hattie carefully sliced all of those models away from their bases, I added some final base coat touches to the models and then moved on to the awesome neon sign that Steve designed. All the glowing stuff is going to get a base coat of white ink, which is nice and vibrant, and then I'm going to try out this AK Wargame enamel fluorescent pink. Look at that, my eyes, man. Into a nice clean airbrush, slowly, layer by layer, thin coat by thin coat, I built up a hot pink glow on the sign. I also did this on the indicator lights on the amp, as well as the large spotlights too. I then cleaned out the airbrush with white spirit, which is what you use to clean enamels, but it's all gunked up and globby. Great. Time for another deep clean. A few minutes later. Now let's see if we can get away with an easier cleanup process by using a water-based paint this time, the Army Painter Speed Paint Caribbean Ocean. A gorgeous colour. This is going to be used to paint the lights that are facing upwards from the stage, so I also sprayed this onto the undersides of all the models on the stage to make it look like any of the light colours on their underside are being tinted by this tone of light. You can get a good approximation of intense light on stuff like this by just adding small spots of pure white where the light would be most intense. Right then, enough messing around, time to bite the bullet and start sticking stuff down. All the members of Gunship are multi-instrumentalists, so I kind of wanted the stage to have a pretty fluid look, like they'd be moving around and swapping positions and instruments too, with the demon dancers doing their stuff in the free space. The dead Marines got strung up on the back wall, the neon sign and hanging PA speakers were attached to the underside of the gantry. Now, to make all the Poxwalker models fit the vibe of the dark but vibrant stage, I gave them all a quick airbrush from the underside up with this muted turquoise ink. It's transparent, so it won't cover all the details, but this should make them all look nice and shadowy from the underside. And then, using some super glue, I just stuck them all down, making sure none of the duplicate or similar poses were next to each other. Next, to prep everything for a bit of neon-soaked lighting, I airbrushed a thin layer of white ink onto the backs of the models, and also a little bit onto the faces of the audience too. I then pulled out the fluorescent pink enamel paint again, resigned myself to the fact that I'm going to have to deep clean the airbrush again, and then gave all those whitened areas a few light coats of intense pink. Okay, I mean, I'm almost done. Really, it's just down to the finishing touches to make the end result look a bit more polished. I cut up some sections of right-angled PVC edging and fixed them in place with actual screws for a bit of fun, and then painted all of the back and sides and weird edges in black. A final coat of matte varnish through the airbrush to knock down any reflective shine from the gloss washes I used, and yeah, I reckon that's it. Okay, yeah, I'm pretty happy with this, to be honest. Now, it's simply a case of transporting it to the band. Now, as much as I trust the Royal Mail with our soft, squishy merch, this thing is more fragile than my ego, so I think hand-delivering it to the band would be the safest bet. Now, the tricky thing is this thing only has two flat sides that can reliably take pressure, so I figured that the best method of keeping it in one piece was to lovingly place it in this towel-padded box and stuffed a cushion behind it. I mean, it wouldn't really have anywhere to go, safe enough for a couple of hours in the car. And this is actually the box I usually transport my Warlord Titan in, and it's still in one piece, so that's a pretty good track record, right? So all packed up, I dropped off Nessa with my pal Steve so she didn't have to sit in a car all day, and made my way up to the glorious Northamptonshire countryside and to the band's studio. Well, first their kitchen.
Do it! Do it, yeah. Open the bar.
Oh, dude, I hope it didn't break in the car.
Shit.
Yeah. This is like Christmas.
Dude.
F***ing hell, dude.
That's amazing. Bravo, guy.
Yeah, man. Wow.
You've done a man's job. It's extremely special. I guess everyone else has already seen this. The painstaking process.
And after the big reveal, we sat down in the studio and had a good old chinwag about loads of stuff. I thought this would be just a quick drop-off, so I didn't have any mics with me, but hopefully the camera mic is decent enough for you to hear the band talking about the diorama, as well as their nerdy hobby passions.
We've already seen it actually, but it is insane.
Yeah, I'm admiring the drum kit that you've built there.
Out of scraps.
Yeah, no, it's pretty good, man. It's like a Slipknot kind of style.
Well, we've definitely got a G here. But
Yeah.
This guy's got what, like a hybrid Ironbird / sort of Explorer going on.
Yeah.
Which was actually my first
Yeah,
proper
that
guitar.
fits you.
The detail is insane.
Thanks.
And also, as a child, this was the tank that I always wanted. So
Yeah.
What the Predator. I mean, I had the Land Raider. I was lucky to get the Land Raider at the time, but I always sort of disappointed with it in comparison to this. So to have this on the stage with us.
Gives us some ideas.
When we actually play live, we need to go and borrow the. Is it a Rhino they have at Warhammer World?
Yeah, it is a Rhino. Yeah.
Yeah. I wonder if they'd let us
That's not a bad idea.
borrow it for some kind of promo. And the guys strung up at the back. Also awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you got Ultramarines.
Yeah, I had to make them Ultramarine stuff because
Yeah.
Space Marine 2 just came out.
Yeah, yeah.
Which we are playing and
Point.
enjoying.
Hey!
Yep.
Yeah.
So we're in the co-op campaign right now. We're only like, what, 3 or 4 missions in?
Yeah.
But
It's
it's
struggle to find the time, but when we can.
It's really good
Yeah.
so far. When we were younger, we were all aspiring filmmakers, and both Al, G, and myself, one of our long-term goals has always been to try and bring Warhammer to the screen in some way, because we both grew up with it. But now that Henry Cavill's right there, to like pushing things forward, and hopefully with the game doing as well as it seems to be doing, like that might help.
Unlock some extra budget for the Prime
Maybe.
series or whatever they're doing, but it needs a Rings of Power level budget.
At least,
It's
yeah.
like, come on.
It's
Bezos.
got to be the biggest, most untapped sort of area of lore, fantasy lore, that has not been brought to the screen yet. Actually, LG brought me back into the Warhammer thing, maybe like, what, 2 years ago? By suggesting...
Went on a heavy run of audiobooks.
Yeah.
We started with the Heresy. Well, yeah, that and Eisenhorn, you know. I have like never actually played a game. I like painted as a kid. Like that 8-year-old that like discovered that epoxy resin melted polystyrene, and from then on I was just like, just create like war-torn landscape and just cut up my Ultramarines.
Yeah.
So never actually got around to like building an army or anything like that.
From Hero Quest to Advanced Hero Quest, and then Space Crusade. Space Crusade was the huge catalyst for me. But I also decided that, hey, there's some guys here making cool stuff. Why can't I do that? So I made a tabletop game with my friend, who was actually our producer now, weirdly enough, called Ninja Quest. There was like a take on Hero Quest. Sent it into Games Workshop, and we didn't get a reply.
Aww.
God damn it.
That's the saddest story.
It was like, we had a little rule book that was handwritten, and you know, we'd made our own little ninja miniatures and stuff. Proper.
Get it on Kickstarter.
We sent it. It's gone somewhere in.
We didn't keep a copy.
Right. We're 9, man.
How come you guys ask me? How do you know me?
YouTube, looking at what was cool and who was making epic stuff.
I subscribe to a couple of channels, painting channels, like you and Squidmore, and like enjoying the artwork and the lore for years really. So just kind of osmosis through the internet, you know.
So the full genesis of the whole arc of this was basically that we reconnected with Warhammer after many years through the Eisenhorn thing. Then reading that pulled us back into multiple books. Then when we were writing the record, I was like, I want to do something that is Warhammer-esque. So Blood for Blood God came out as a title, and that song was kind of built to the title with that kind of inspiration in mind. And then when it came around to making the video for that, we're like, well, we partnered with Seth Eckerman, who are a fantastic directing duo, and they did a fantastic job with that. But we also felt like the visual side of Warhammer we hadn't made the visual connection. So then we're thinking like, well, it's Blood for the Blood God. What can we actually do that's a little more Warhammer leaning? And that's when the genesis for, come on, like, why can't we build Gunship as Chaos Space Marines, and who are we going to get to do it? So then it was just like figuring out who we thought would do a really good job. And here we are, and you have absolutely smashed it. I think you made something remarkable here, I really do.
Thank you.
I mean, like, I don't think this has been done before, in any way, shape or form.
No, I did try. I was like searching for, like Warhammer gig, Warhammer concert.
I did it
Warhammer
too,
band.
when pitching Ref to you, like, trying to figure out, couldn't find anything.
Yeah.
It's definitely super appealing. Like, imagine being at that show. We tried to kind of create on the Monster in Paradise music video we did, like create a gig in the Terminator world. That was fun.
It's great.
Cause, so that's that kind of idea is really exciting.
What does a gig look like?
A show in different
In a
worlds.
cyberpunk world.
Yeah.
Some swag for you, dude.
Swag! I love swag!
Posters,
Whoa!
t-shirts. Yeah, thank you so much.
That's okay,
Gonna
you're
make
so
some-
welcome.
The only thing they're missing, maybe, is a tiny Stonehenge.
So
Can we add
modeling. Yeah, feel free to add it. I'll paint it up for you if you build it. After our fun little chat, we signed the back of the diorama. They even asked me to sign it, which was very weird. And I think the band are ultimately planning on doing some kind of cool giveaway of this diorama at some point in the future. So if you want to hear about that when it happens, you know what to do. Hit the subscribe button so you don't miss notifications, stuff like that. Hit a bell, is that a thing? Also, obviously, go follow Gunship on all of your socials, please. I'll leave all the interesting links down in the description. And by the way, if this video has been the one to finally tip you over the edge and inspire you to try out 3D printing for yourself, the printer that I use for this whole project, the Uniformation GK2, has now been replaced with the GK3. That means Uniformation have put the GK2 on sale at the moment, down from $899 to $749. I let Uniformation know that I used the printer in this project, and they created a discount code for me, Midwinter150, that you can enter at the checkout to get an extra $150 off. So that takes it down to $749 to $599, which is honestly a steal at that price. A few months ago, I also made a video about getting to grips with that printer as a total beginner, and that should have popped up somewhere around here. So if you want more information on it, just follow that link. A massive thanks, as always, to the channel's incredible supporters over on Patreon. As is now tradition, our newest supporters not only get a shout out, but directly contribute a bit of sausage to Nessa's greedy mouth as a physical representation of how you literally put food on our table. So here's this week's amazing newcomers. Okay, Nessa, it's your favorite time of the week. Okay, I think people felt a bit sorry for you last week because you only got 3, but this week you have 12. So this first one is from Rectorino. Good job. Deathius. Dan Mon. Alex Higdon. Kai Morin. Zig. Radio Grackle. Phoenix's Den. Robert Bell. Adam Lozon. Nick Grey Primer. And Tim Schmalls. Not bad. Well done. And that's it. I hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you next time. Bye for now.